Testing, testing, 1, 2, 3, testing. Welcome, survivors. This is Eerie Knight of the Pseudo Posse, and today I'm happy to present my first horde base of the 2.0 update. It fully counters the late game hordes on max game stage, insane nightmare settings against the powerful new charged and infernal zombie variants. It even nullifies the Frostclaw and Plague Spitter despite being clearly visible to the player. Plus, you can melee to your heart's content throughout the horde, not having to worry about any of the above threats demolishing your base. And as an added bonus, an early game variant of the design that works quite well for those early hordes. Needless to say, all hordes were tested on insane difficulty with nightmare speed to put the bases under the most pressure and worst test conditions. So without further ado, let's dive in. The inspiration for this design actually came from a good friend of mine who made a key observation while playing around with a forced zombie crawl horde-based design. And that is, if zombies quickly pass by you, they'll all but ignore you. As long as you surround a single block opening with some solid, non-see-through shapes, zombies will continuously stream on by without a care in the world. Even the Frostclaw, who should clearly be able to see me, passes on by oblivious to my presence. Not once did he attempt to throw his boulder at me. Very similar story with the Plague Spitter. Out of all the times they ran by, one spitter stopped once to spawn insects, and they just harmlessly went up to my roof. All other times they ran on by, negating their most annoying mechanic. Whether running upright or crawling, the problem arises that zombies move by so fast, it is hard to hit them. It is difficult to predict when they will pass by, as your line of sight from the sides are blocked by necessity. This makes getting melee hits rather difficult, which defeats the purpose of making a melee horde base. The late game solution is, of course, placing electric fence posts on either side of the murder hole. The stun effect is an excellent mechanism for freezing zombies in place right in front of your field of view for easy melee hits. As I mentioned, my friend played around with the idea of zombies crawling, but that makes headshots difficult. Why is that, you say? Here are some zombies in the crawling position. Their heads are nice and visible and ready for some smashing. However, introduce some electricity into the mix and suddenly they stand up into the top block, making their heads out of reach. So I thought to myself, can I make this concept work with zombies upright and running? And yes, it totally works. Plus, running versus crawling allows you to use this as an early game melee base. Let me show you what I mean. Here we are in the early horde base design, and try as I might, I cannot hit those damn zombies regularly, and I'm far away from getting some fence posts. What to do? Oh! I know! What if I add some bars just before the murder hole? And just like that, zombies jump and land roughly in front of us. During their recovery time post-jump, simply give them a whack on the head. Naturally, you couldn't put a bar in the middle of your crawling corridor, so if wanting to force zombies to crawl, you'd have to wait until the mid or late game to do so with this design. The downside of the bar is that it is easy for it to take incidental damage from zombies. Not to worry, a simple window to the left of the murder hole will allow you to make periodic repairs to the surrounding blocks to keep your horde base up and running. Ideally, you'll want to replace the bar with electric fence posts as soon as possible, as they simply work much better. Before we get into some potential late game designs with this concept, let's focus on how to build the early game base. Fortunately, you won't need a large variety of shapes to make this work, but those looking for a simple to build design should be quite happy. Early game, you don't have a ton of materials, presumably, so building your base 15 blocks high or making a pit to achieve the same 15 block fall distance is pretty rough. Normally, you'd want to build that high, as zombies falling a shorter distance will enter destroy everything mode, or rage mode, and start bashing on your blocks. However, early game hordes are simple enough that you can survive a little bit of zombie rage. Thus, I'll only build a staircase 4 blocks high and single block width, and I'll make that about 14 blocks long. Make a right angle, build out an additional 4 blocks in length. Make some space for a zombie dropper, as the zombies passing by will only do so if they see a path to us, so we need to drop them after they leave our field of view. This is extremely important to the design of the base. If you allow them to reach your fighting position, you are simply dead. The exact shape of the fighting position doesn't matter too much. The only key takeaway is to build your platform with a 1 block gap to the 14 block pathway. Build it up to the height of your zombie path or the zombie dropper. I initially tried this plate quarter triangle setup here, but that resulted in this, so ignore that for now. Build 2 blocks high on either side to create your murder hole. I opted for the cube 0.25 meter shape here on the bottom, but switched to the plate in the late game horde so I could get a bit closer. On the other side of your murder hole, use whatever solid blocks you want to surrounded on 3 sides except for the bottom. I chose the stair shape and oriented it such that the flat part surrounded my hole. I raised the height of the side blocks to prevent any zombies from jumping up and topped the center with another cube 0.25 meter shape. The rest is really up to you. You'll want to enclose your fighting position by the second horde, as that is when vultures usually start to spawn. And as previously mentioned, you'll need the side platform to make repairs on the bars during the horde. For that shape, I used the cube half-thin window arch, which blocks cop spit and allows you to repair through it. Ultimately, for the zombie dropper, I kept the plate quarter triangle setup, but added the ramp 6 meter 03 before it, 3 blocks long. You really only need 2 block lengths, but safety first. With 3, you'll never have any zombies make it across. The design is simple. First row of ramp 6 meter 03 on the level of the zombie path with the wider part of the incline at the bottom, and reverse that for the second row of ramp 6 meter 03s on the top. Above that, place cube halves at least 2 blocks high to prevent zombies from jumping over the slide. Normally, I'd place a ramp or wedge shape in front, which helps to prevent zombies beating on the first column of blocks, but let's see how it does without it. Don't forget to top off your roof with spikes for the second horde, and if intending to play beyond the first couple hordes, you'll need protection against cop spit. Just a few blocks from the zombie path, build a wall with whatever solid shape you prefer. Make it high enough and wide enough to block line of sight. If you can see any patch of green from the inside, go out and make adjustments until your line of sight to the outside is gone. This will adequately protect you from cops at range. Then once you are ready, get your horde on. The downside of not anti-raging falling zombies is that they like to stop in front of the bar after another trip up and randomly beat on blocks. But that is also why we have our little repair hole on the side. Without that, they'll destroy the path. This design probably won't scale to the mid game unless you replace the bar with electric fence posts, as I think the increase in zombie damage output might be too much to keep up with repairs. Of course, the game difficulty and max horde zombie count will affect this outcome. All in all, the design holds up really well, only losing a few random blocks as a result of zombie raid. And again, that's on insane difficulty. And the first ramp 6 meter 03 shape of the second row took quite a lot of damage, so definitely add something in front of it. I'd have to say that this base was a lot of fun to play with, and I think you could easily make this a multiplayer base by adding another murder hole further down the path, or put it on the opposite side of the first murder hole and loop the zombie path around the fighting position of both players. Where this base truly shines is in the mid to late game, as electric fence posts turn this base into an unstoppable force against all the toughest new zombie variants. Charge zombies, infernal zombies, frost claws, these assholes. Beyond that, the other important consideration to our late game design is to anti-rage the falling zombies. A raged infernal will transform your base quickly into Swiss cheese. I'll present 2 options today, showcasing each design. The first option would be to achieve a 15 block drop height, either by building 15 blocks above the ground, which is a lot of materials, or we could build like 8 blocks high and build a 7 block deep pit in the drop zones. I chose the latter approach with the pit to avoid all the excess materials in a larger base. The second option I'll present today for anti-raging is the use of more electric fence posts to cover the drop region. And in the second design, I also make some other design alterations to show what is possible. The first design with the pit is essentially a scaled up version of the early game horde-based design. If it ain't broke, why fix it? Immediately you'll notice some differences and improvements on the early horde-based design. First and most obvious is the pit, as we extend the drop distance to achieve a cumulative 15 block drop. Second difference is we no longer extend our zombie pathway all the way to the bottom. Instead, the path is suspended, supported by the pillar 0.05 meter block shape. Zombies don't see this block as a viable path and will completely ignore it, thus making it an excellent shape for horizontally supporting your structures like our path here. And by suspending our path, we prevent any would-be zombies from beating on the bottom supports. The third difference is now we have more stairs leading up to the path. Reason being, infernals hit hard, and if they destroy a staircase, it's good to have a spare. You might consider adding more stairs or ladders depending on your own personal results. The fourth difference is obviously the electric fence posts, which are positioned at the top of the cop spit shield and below the melee position, such that the wire crosses the zombie path at a suitable height to catch zombies. Railings were used to cover the fence posts on the inside to allow for easy repairs during the horde. More or less, everything else is the same, just scaled up for the larger horde base. We still have the cop spit line of sight shield to break cop line of sight from below. We still have the murder hole set up, just with the larger tower for defense. And we still have the zombie dropper, but I did remove the plate quarter triangles as they weren't needed. When I say this horde base rocks, I truly mean it. Day 7000, max player level, max game stage for the snow biome. Whatever. Infernals and the like are completely negated. They don't stop to hit your murder hole. And in case you haven't noticed, the 1 meter murder hole opening itself has no block shape covering it. Completely open, and still no zombies try to come through or spit at you. Zombies continuously stream by, get stunned, and either fall from their own clumsiness and bunching up on the narrow walkway, or are unceremoniously shoved off by yours truly. The pit truly shines here. Zombies rarely stop to beat on the walls of the pit or the ladders leading toward the ground level. Again, I tested to see how the ramp 6-meter 03 slide works without any wedge or ramp blocks leading into it, and while one block was destroyed, it held up throughout the night. Most zombies don't really reach this position, so it really isn't under a lot of pressure. This base design is fundamentally simple, highly effective, and will turn those late game threats into complete jokes. And the best part, all of this base is constructed from concrete, saving a bunch on steel upgrades. At most, I would recommend upgrading the slide and the stairs to steel to safeguard those throughout the night, but it really isn't necessary. This base completely trivializes all the new zombies. I really can't say much more about this design or praise it enough in its ability to crush hordes at high game stage, so I won't. Let's move on to the second design option, using more electric fence posts with no pit.
Beyond the rather obvious difference of no pit, additional electric fence posts, and probably my voice, the only other main difference is this thing right here. I figured since we already have the standing structure for the shield, might as well attach a zombie dropper to it. Doing so is completely optional, as not once did I feel overwhelmed during the Horde. But you can have some fun with the design at your pleasure. All you'd really need is the same setup as before, just removing the pit. For the dropper, I chose the pull 4-way path, but I found upon trying a Horde with the usual design, it didn't quite work so well. Without the player on the opposite end of the dropper, shooting and fighting zombies in melee range, the dropper tends to overstuff when unattended, and this happens. And with the shield destroyed, this happens. Not good. Thus I altered the pathway and forced zombies to crawl. In front leading in, ramps on the bottom, wedge narrow middle on the top. 2 wedge narrow tips on the front, cube 3/4 shapes along the top length of the corridor, more wedge narrow tips along the right side, and wedge narrow lows on the left. This setup forces zombies to crawl, and a wider space inside than the previous design greatly reduces the amount of damage taken from zombies. It doesn't drop the occurrence to 0, but it's much better. Electric fence posts are placed directly below the pull 4-way, so dropping zombies are stunned to prevent zombie rage. The only other major difference in the design other than the stairs and the direction of zombie traffic is all of the fence posts lining the bottom of the shield wall, and within the interior of the tower, the receiving end of all the fence posts. Horde works very much the same way. Zombies come toward the murder hole. Some drop beforehand via the zombie dropper, and the rest make it to us for some delicious melee action. The fence post coverage does a decent enough job preventing zombie rage, but the fence post coverage wasn't enough to touch all falling zombies, which allowed some to enter destroy everything mode. After trying the setup, I would recommend not dropping zombies into suspended fence posts, as they can miss them. Instead, I think it would be better to place them on ground level and protect them. In that way, while a zombie might miss the wire on the way down, they're bound to run into it on the ground while running around. But in all honesty, for this particular design, the pit is just easier. It doesn't involve all the wire setup, plus you don't have to worry about keeping up with repairs throughout the night. But if you are not spec'd into Miner 69er and don't want to dig out a pit, this is a definite option if you don't want to build 15 blocks high. You just need to be sure your wire coverage is good. All of that being said, the base easily withstood the Horde despite taking a bit more damage than the pit version. I'm not going to do a full build guide on the late game bases, as that would extend the video length to ungodly lengths. But more or less, if you simply scale up the early game version, for which I did show how to build, you should be set. I pointed out key shapes in the late game design that differed from the early game base, but if you still have any questions as to what block shapes I used or how I built a certain section, ask away in the comments and I'll be happy to provide details. Hope you all enjoyed the video, and I hope I've given you some inspiration to build a new type of melee horde base. I've got another design I am working on that is rather diabolical, so stay tuned for next week for that build. If you made it to this point in the video and you haven't already, please give the video a like for the almighty YouTube algorithm. Spread the video far and wide, my friends. And of course, subscribe and tap the bell for notifications so as not to miss any future videos. Lastly, Taka Bear and I want to extend our appreciation to our wonderful Patreon supporters, whose generosity means so much to us. Thank you all so much. On that note, this is Eerie Knight signing off. See you all in the next one.